be honest, I thought it was quite arrogant of them to come with an outdated model.
Right.
And quite gutsy of them.
Highest ever production, highest ever market share. They broke into top 5 car manufacturer in the country. They overtook Kia.
Future generations of Fortuner eventually could be monocoques, hybrid, and some form of electrification.
So me is with every possible generation, the prices went up significantly. And every possible time a launch price was heard and we were like, oh my God, it's expensive. And people still lapped it up.
Toyota did want the Swift, and the Jimny. And, I think they said that they politely declined that way. Welcome back to Deep Drive, our weekly podcast powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. Now, this week is a special topic a lot of you have been waiting for. It is about Toyota. We tell you why Toyotas don't break down, what makes Toyota tick, and why it is doing so well in the Indian market. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Hormazd, an amazing company, world's largest car maker. Would love to know from you about their entry into India and the strategy that they adopted while entering the Indian market.
Before that, Ketan, I'm going to press you. Let's just have an overview of how they're doing right now, because I think the reason we're doing this podcast is Toyota is absolutely rocking.
Phenomenal run, Hormazd. FY24 financials just came out about a month and a half back. They've crossed turnover of 50,000 crore. Turnover grew by almost 60%.
And Toyota is all about profit as well, isn't it?
Phenomenal profits, Hormazd. Profits, FY21, they were in red, minus 51 crore of loss. Last financial year, FY24, the profits were over 4,700 crore.
What?
Whopping $570 million.
From a 51 crore loss to over 4,000 crores.
Profit. They're sweating their assets, highest ever production, highest ever market share. They broke into top 5 car manufacturer in the country. They overtook Kia. The models are still in strong demand, the overall market, but we know the market is now kind of going through a little bit of consolidation phase. Toyota models are still being sought after. Maruti, Suzuki's supplied models are doing very well.
I think that's really been a real winner for them. I think over 50% of all Toyotas are now Marutis.
Absolutely. I think Suzuki's alliance globally has offered them those incremental opportunity to get into new segments, which they've struggled over the years. So we have the Glanza that has given Toyota a market share of around 5 to 7% in the premium hatchback space. Thanks to Rumion, MPV and High Rider SUV. In the mid-size SUV segment or UV segment, they already have about 11% segment share. So clearly those are incremental volumes that Toyota is getting from the Suzuki alliance. So, and clearly,
an alliance that has worked, and I think in this podcast, I want to talk about why this alliance has worked and others haven't. It's really to do with a lot of dynamics at the leadership of both companies. So really very, very interesting anecdotes on that. But Ketan, before going into the history, just one last thing is, and you would be the best person to tell us, is it fair to say that some of these models are still got a long waiting despite the market going flat?
Absolutely. I think Hi-Cross and Innova Krista continues to have strong demand. Toyota Fortuner continues to rule the roost, 99% share, averaging about 2,000 units, about 1,500 to 2,000 units. In this market, a vehicle priced above 55 lakh. Phenomenal. Still continues to do well. And the Toyota's own models continue to bring them the volumes and profitability.
Right. And I think on that very high note, let's go back 25 years or thereabouts.
I'm very curious to know about their entry strategy. It always is fun to listen to you about.
Well, yeah, I think, Toyota was one of the companies that was coming into India when the kind of passenger car market was delicensed in 93. They came in 2000 with the Qualis, but, they've been in India before. They came in, 83 with DCM Toyota for making LCVs. Very interesting why they tied up with the DCM, which was erstwhile Delhi Cloth Mills. I think there was a relationship because don't forget, Toyota also used to sell looms, for the textile industry. So there was some relationship over there. And the point I'm trying to make is Toyota is one company that believes in relationships and long-lasting relationships. So I think that's the context I want to set with that small little nugget of information.
1983, was it?
Yeah, that 1983. I think 95 it packed up. Then DCM did the debut. So it was, I think. But I think with vehicles, they came with Kirloskar, Vikram Kirloskar Group, right from the beginning. Again, that is a partnership or association which has lasted. I think the Kirloskar family stake came down to, I think, maybe just 1% and has bounced back to 11%. So
right.
Again, it shows the value they give to relationships. So again, with the Kirloskar family, it's been a relationship right from the beginning. And that's what Toyota does, not only with, all business partners, be it the vendors, be it the dealers. For them, it's a long-term play. Absolutely. And that's what really makes, one of the things that makes Toyota what it is. Absolutely. But coming back to 2000, we knew they were coming with an SUV. We didn't know.
But very quirky model, isn't it?
I have to tell you the story. Shapur and I were in Pune. We were testing some vehicle and we saw this boxy looking vehicle. And normally we had a camera then also. There were no real mobile phone cameras. So we had a camera and Shapur all said to take a picture. I said, "Hey, Shapur, they can't be bringing that. Yeah, that must be some mule they are testing." Because that was already an outdated Kijang. Kijang was the international term. It was called many things in different markets, Ansa, Tamaro, but it was known as it was the third generation Kijang. The fourth generation Kijang had come out in 97 already. Indonesia was one of the main markets. So we just assumed that in 2000 they'll bring the fourth generation Kijang. But no, they brought that absolute boxy third generation car, which they call the Qualis. So that's what
very interesting choice, I must say.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, and I think what it went to show is what Toyota did is they analyzed the market. And they were quite confident that even though this was a bit of a dabba with small 14-inch wheels at that time,
too small for that size of vehicle.
It looked very small. It was very tiny. You would imagine an SUV to have bigger wheels, but they just knew in terms of quality, they could just blow everything out of the park over there. They knew that even with that old, let's say, boxy Qualis, in terms of product, they were far ahead of everything else, which was fundamentally the Tata Sumo and the Mahindra Armada and then Bolero after that.
Right.
So I think, it was so superior, and even though it was turned out to be more expensive, it just kind of functioned flawlessly, and it was a big hit with the fleet operators.
Now, phenomenal. In a small car market, that choice...
That's right. And if you see even today, you go to somewhere like Srinagar, you'll still see these old Qualises with intergalactic mileages already on them, 8, 9, 10 lakhs, still running flawlessly. So that kind of defined what Toyota was. I'll be honest, I thought it was quite arrogant of them to come with an outdated model, and quite gutsy of them, because there have been brands which have come with outdated models. You had Peugeot coming with the, let's say the 309, the 306 had come out, brother, that had failed. You had Mercedes coming out with the W124 E-Class. The very year the next generation 201 was launched, that also failed. But that didn't deter Toyota, because I think Toyota was so confident that, in the competitive landscape it was operating in, it was far ahead of everything in terms of quality. So Qualis was a huge success, and despite being a generation old. And I felt, that again, Toyota, they're not very flexible. And I think in hindsight, I'm sure they must have regretted it. They discontinued the Qualis, which actually gave the Tavera a lease of life, and they brought in the Innova at that time.
Right.
They jumped a generation.
Right.
So the Kijang had gone, and they went straight to the next gen Innova. I think in 2005 it came out, and they discontinued the Qualis. But the Qualis...
Old call, no? Hormazd?
Well,
for a successful model?
I think, that's what was done internationally. It's only in India that two generations run concurrently and run well.
Right.
Which should have been done. I think Maruti done it brilliantly. It worked very well. Tata had done it with the Vista and the Indica, both running concurrently.
And even now we see many brands continuing with the old generation.
Exactly. Look at the Scorpio, classic and all running well. But, Toyota did things in a particular way. It's good and bad. I think in this case it was bad, because what they did is they kind of gave the Tavera a lease of life, and the Tavera filled in where the Qualis left out.
Yes.
So that's really what saved them, because the Innova was more premium, more expensive, and it kind of vacated a position below, which the Qualis could have continued with, but it was a vacuum which the Tavera went. And again on the Innova, superb, quality. And if you look at the specs, it was a 2.5 liter turbo engine, mild turbo, producing only 102 horsepower. At that time for 2.5 liters, only 102 horsepower, you wondered what it was. And that was Toyota's philosophy of not stressing the engine.
Wow.
Just to get that longevity. For them, that was enough power. It did the job. And, that Innova has run on and on and on. And then by the time they came to the next Innova, the Krista, I think it was 2016, it was very difficult. I mean, how can we improve on this? And they did. They got a better engine. They got 2 engine choices at that time, 2.4, 2.8. But again, soon BS6 norms rationalize that. It's just Correct. A 2.4 next generation engine to meet the new emission norms. They did have a problem on that. Some problem. They came with 17-inch wheels on the higher variants, which actually, because of the low tire profile, there were a lot of, let's say, impact damage flats. And we saw that, 17 wasn't a good number. It was there even on the EcoSport because our roads are so bad. But going back to 16, it worked. So, it's an amazing story of, and I think the Innova, as we know, the High Cross, again, killing it.
They've raised the bar to the
and level. They've learned their lesson, and they're doing Krista and High Cross parallelly.
Yeah, phenomenal, I must tell you. This financial year, they're going to be selling over 100,000 Innova.
Yeah.
Both Krista and High Cross. And the brand is likely to be about $2.5 billion brand.
Just Innova brand is just 2.5 billion.
2.5, 21,000 crore. It's just phenomenal as to how that one brand has just gone on. And with every possible generation, it finds more fans who continue to be the brand ambassadors there.
And I think everyone who's come with a rival has failed miserably against the Innova.
99% share, almost 99% share.
We've had Kia come with the Carnival. Now they've moved away with the CBU. They know they can't compete there. We had the Marazzo, which again couldn't compete. We had the Logi to some extent. We had the Mobilio. All these guys try to compete, and Ertiga is the only one which has done, and now Rumion, which ironically is Toyota taking advantage of the badge engineering strategy. But that's right at the lower end of the market. So a real good place for Toyota to be in kind of ruling the MPV space with, let's say, at the lower end, they've got the Rumion as well. But of course, Ertiga sells more. But the Innova seems to be untouchable.
And what's phenomenal, Hormazd, to me is with every possible generation, the prices went up significantly. And every possible time, a launch price was heard and we were like, oh my God, it's expensive. And people still lapped it up.
I think the message is you can't put a price on reliability.
Absolutely.
And quality in that sense, but quality in the terms of the durability, I think that peace of mind that a Toyota brings is phenomenal. And people know that when they buy a Toyota, it's an investment. So they're willing to spend the exorbitant prices which they're asking. And frankly, the companies become, you can say what you want, greedy, arrogant, but they're just getting the prices, and why not? We can really crib about how they are fleecing customers with their pricing. Every time I go in an Innova Krista, which is always a cab, sometimes you're going to the airport, I look at the roof liner. And I cannot believe they've got that scruffy, knitted kind of fabric, not the woven one, which is a more premium looking one. That on a 30 lakh car, 30 plus lakh car. And, sometimes it's a little flaky and all, but no sunroof, of course.
Yes.
They don't care, because they know that people are buying this car for one thing, and that is, it's a great investment. It runs flawlessly. You get a great resale value when you want to go to sell it. So your money is covered in that sense.
And amazing comfort, no, Hormazd, for a ladder-on frame.
It is amazing comfort. In fact, I think we said this in our earlier podcast on the Rocks about ladder-on frame. So the Rocks is really good. I think Toyota, the Innova, is still the gold standard as far as body-on-frame dynamics go, because they've really mastered the art. And Toyota, don't forget, have generations and years and decades of experience with the body on frame. I mean, the Hilux is legendary. I mean, used by all kinds of people, who just want that ultimate reliability and nothing else. So I think, and that translates again to the Fortuner.
Absolutely.
Fortuner, honestly, interiors are just terrible, for what that vehicle. I mean, you're charging almost 55 to 60 lakhs for that car, and you look at the inside and you just cannot believe what you're paying for. The ride also isn't great, but it offers phenomenal performance, that kind of go anywhere capability and feeling.
On road.
Presence on road, and the fact that, you feel like this car is utterly indestructible. I can go anywhere, it will not break down. Going to Ladakh, going wherever you want, you just have that total peace of mind. And that's what people are paying a premium for.
No, it's just phenomenal. I mean, that brings me to this question, Hormazd, about what makes Toyota a Toyota, and going back to a very famous Toyota production system.
Yeah.
Could you, they've opened it up to the world, but yet no one comes close to them in terms of reliability and quality.
I mean, that's absolutely. So Toyota production system, it's all about continuous improvement, Kaizen, what they call. And frankly, I think one Toyota engineer put it to me perfectly. When I asked him, I said, everyone else follows the Toyota production system. You've opened it up. You've taught the industry about it. You've taught your suppliers about it. So why is it that others don't get Toyota quality? He put it very simply. He said it's like dieting. Everyone knows how to diet, but how many can diet? And I'm a classic example.
Not too far.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It comes down all to mindset. At the end of the day, with Toyota, you realize that it's not the machines that make the car, but it's the people that make the car.
Yeah, phenomenal.
And, we went down recently to the factory, and, where it all starts, they have what they call Gurukul, their training institute. It's all about getting the right mindset. It's all about training you to understand quality, to be humble, to make sure that your whole orientation is not towards taking shortcuts, attention to detail. And, that's really what makes it. It's the people at Toyota. Very interesting. They don't take, let's say people from other OEMs. That's too much baggage. Wow. They'll have to unlearn their ways. Wow. So most, except at the higher end where the executives and all are, but, let's say at the shop floor level, they're all almost freshers. This is almost their first job.
Phenomenal.
And because they want to mold them in the Toyota way of thinking. And, you go to Gurukul and you see the institute, it's a very simple process, but it's amazing of how they just kind of, train you to just think quality, don't take shortcuts, have that attention to detail. Because at the end of the day, it's someone, if something goes wrong, it's because you go down to the root cause analysis, it's someone, messed up somewhere on the production line. Not that it doesn't happen, honestly, it does. But I think what's amazing is Toyota does their root cause analysis and goes down to why it happened. Also, Toyota have, the famous Andon line where you can just, pull and you're encouraged. If there is a fault on the assembly line, don't sweep it under the carpet and just let it go on, not your problem. You're encouraged to stop, make sure that the problem is fixed there and then before the assembly line proceeds again. So I think it's really the culture. It's the Toyota way is just the way the people are and, the way they think, very, very different. And, again, very rigid in certain ways. As I said, like for them, Qualis was old generation. No, we can't continue that. And that was that, So I think, and, when you talk to some of their suppliers also, they're common suppliers, both for Toyota and some other OEMs. So when I ask them, why is it that Toyota, Toyota has better quality using the same suppliers than other people? They say it's again their process and their absolute discipline. They lock in a program, they don't deviate. Other manufacturers, last minute they might make a design change. Now that will affect the tool. So then the tool has to be changed at the last minute, and it just throws everything into a kilter. But, their view is that because development cycles and R&D cycles are so long that there might be a new technology, which you want to incorporate at the last time or a feature or something like that. For Toyota, no. They'll live with it. They might even get flack from the consumer. The cars might even, but they will not change their schedule and they'll be absolutely on dot. So it's this absolute manic discipline that's drilled into every employee in the company, in the shop floor, that really delivers that level of quality, which has really become kind of, almost mythical.
Now, I have an interesting anecdote, Hormazd. I remember meeting Yatin Shah, the promoter of Precision Camshaft. They are based out of Solapur. It's interior of Maharashtra. Getting to Solapur is not easy. And Toyota people once approached Precision Camshaft for sourcing for global operation. So, of course, for an Indian company, they were all over the moon and they really welcomed them warmly. First meeting, all of them excited. Second meeting, very keen to know what's really happening. And meeting went on and on. After fifth meeting, Yatin Shah told me that, it was about ensuring that they are our guest and we have to deal with them. And they kept on coming over a period of few years. It was in the 21st meeting that they approved and Precision Camshaft got a global contract. And Yatin Shah was talking about how their systems and processes are so thorough, and they were wanting to get to every minute details, and it was phenomenal, the entire process. After a point in time, they just gave up. But it just goes to show as to how thorough they want to be with regards to whatever they source, even right down to tier 3 level, tier 1, to even the service that they deliver at the consumer end. So,
no, that's an amazing story, Ketan, and you're absolutely right. And I think once they have their suppliers, they don't jump suppliers for, 100 rupee difference. And honestly, that's some of the friction between Suzuki and Toyota when they were doing some joint alliances, because Suzuki chooses a supplier not on who's the cheapest, but on who can give them consistent quality, who's reliable and whom they can trust.
Right.
Honestly, just to give an anecdote, it's this mindset with which we print Autocar India. Now, I've had my same printer,
right,
Kala Jyotis, for 20 years.
Oh, fantastic.
And we've had others offering us better rates and stuff, but we know the guy, we are comfortable with him, so we stick to him just the way Toyota does. So I think it's really this, let's say, deep relationship with the vendors, which let's say makes all the difference. And as I said, a little bit of difference in culture with Suzuki has caused a little bit of friction from what I hear.
Right.
I think both respect each other. And actually that's really, as I said, it's one of the few joint ventures or not joint ventures, it's alliances that has worked. Basically, at the end of the day, they kind of work together to getting that same level of quality. And I think one misconception we have to clear is that, Toyota badged Maruti Suzuki is fundamentally the same car, because made on the same assembly line by, let's say, a set of workers which does both badges. So fundamentally, they are the same cars. And honestly, it's a strategy that's working quite well. In fact, one of the most successful partnerships in the auto industry.
Well, what makes them successful in your assessment, Hormazd?
I think, it's a deep respect both companies have for each other. I think what's amazing, and not many people know this, that, I think Soichiro Toyoda, who's Akiro's father, helped out Osamu Suzuki on several occasions.
Oh.
I think one occasion was, I'm not sure when, maybe 60s, 70s, there was some emissions regulation change suddenly in Japan.
Right.
And that made Suzuki, which was fundamentally on two-stroke engines, they just couldn't comply at all.
Oh.
Toyota helped out with Daihatsu and gave Suzuki engines at that time.
Oh, wow.
So can you imagine a rival doing that? But that's, the respect they had for each other.
Phenomenal.
I think another occasion, Suzuki was in some financial crisis, and what I hear is that Toyota had helped out at that time. So there was this deep respect each one had. And, for Suzuki-san to kind of get into a partnership, because he's a feisty fellow, he's kind of, we had these partnerships and wiggled out with everyone, whether it's GM, Daewoo at some extent, and Volkswagen, we know.
Yes.
That was a fun one. You had this David and Goliath, and finally Osamu had the last laugh, pulling out of that partnership, and we know what happened to Volkswagen with Dieselgate.
Right.
So, Suzuki's he's been fiercely independent.
Right.
And not really want to go in for partnerships. He had one with GM, but I think he spun them around over there also a fair bit, and, always came out, let's say with the upper hand. Of course, the price everyone wants an association with Suzuki is the Indian market.
Absolutely.
This is their jewel. This is their crown jewel. And, to have an association gives you instant access to almost 47-48% of the third largest market in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what Toyota wanted. So it's been a fantastic partnership for Toyota. And I think, it was one of those things where I think even Suzuki needed help. They needed technology. They don't have hybrid technology, investment in EVs, all that. So it really worked well. And I think, as we've said, for Toyota, actually, it's worked brilliantly because 50% of their cars are actually Marutis, which has really given them volume. Their dealers, benefit as well. So it's really a fantastic alliance, as I said, born out of mutual respect of the leadership at the top. But having said that, I think Toyota did want the Swift, and the Jimny, and I think they said that they politely declined that way. So obviously,
so at the working level, there can always be differences. But
I think at the working level in the market, they'll compete like cats and dogs. That they would. But at the top level, where certain decisions are made, I think it's even beyond India. That's all happening in Japan.
No, absolutely. And I think one major change we also saw in terms of the structure is that India was now being seen as a region. India, in fact, at the beginning of the calendar year 2024, if I'm not wrong, or 2023, India was given regional responsibility, wherein Yoshimura-san, the current MD, is now going to oversee the entire India, Middle East and Oceania region. And the exports out of the alliance, I think this alliance conversation started in 1819, and we've seen that play out over the last 5 years. What we saw was that Toyota has been exporting Suzuki cars, badged as Toyota, and selling it around the world. Yeah. In no time, exports of Toyota from India have quadrupled from 9,000 units, if I'm not wrong, in 2020. They already export about 35,000 cars. The Ciaz, which is not sold in India, is sold as Toyota Belta in South Africa.
Yeah.
So clearly, the alliance has a much bigger global play. And we've recently read about the investment that is going on in Maharashtra.
Right.
20,000 crore investment. And Hormazd, more details I'll share as we speak. But that is going to have a massive global play for Toyota Suzuki. And clearly, the alliance has just started out, and there's a lot more to come in the future.
Absolutely, Ketan. It's been, really had been a phenomenal run for them over 25 years, if you see from how they've been, and, in a very Toyota way. But there have been failures as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm very curious and keen to know about their endeavor to get into the compact car space on their own.
Yeah.
With the Etios and Liva. It was a big bet. What did you think of that era?
So I think, what they called it, the code was EFC, economical family car. And frankly, they messed it up. And that's one of the reasons they said, listen, we don't know this space. Maruti Suzuki knows it. Let them do it and we'll partner with them because it's worked. I think for Toyota or any car manufacturer, when you're going into a new segment, the biggest disadvantage you have is you don't know the customer.
Right.
You don't know what he wants. You can do enough market surveys. You can do what you want, but you really don't know what he wants. So to tailor your product exactly to his need in a cost-effective way is the biggest challenge.
Right.
With the Toyota Innova, when the, let's say the fourth generation or the third generation was launched in 2016 for us, third generation, they had a ready base of 500,000 Innova guys, just ready to upgrade. So they knew exactly what the guys wanted also, where the quirks, so they could tailor the product in there.
Right.
In this, they had absolutely no baseline. They had to start from zero. So they got it wrong. Firstly, I think they didn't give enough importance to design.
Right.
And they thought, as long as we give a functional, reliable, practical product, it'll be fine. The same Qualis strategy, but it backfired terribly because this is a much more aspirational segment.
Absolutely.
This is private owners want to buy cars, not just fleet. Qualis was a bit like that. So they rejected the car. They did silly things. You had the flap-type door handles. You had a central instrument cluster. Now that was seen to be cheap because the Nano had that also. It was basically to save costs. If you're doing an RHD or an LHD, you just have one, instrument panel tool. You don't need to have two sets of tools for that. And injection molding can be expensive. So NVH was quite high. Right. Now NVH is one of those things where, this is where companies like Mahindra really spend because they want to have an edge over that. To get an incremental improvement in NVH, you have to spend a disproportionate amount of money and resource, which Toyota didn't want to do. So NVH was quite bad. The design was, as I said, I think the biggest downer. And it just felt built to a cost and cheap. And, they were not pricing it very cheap either. So I think all the kind of, let's say, the reliability, all that, it went out of the window because at that point also, I think the Indian market had evolved. They didn't want their cars lasting forever. They were, now used to changing it fast. So
people were upgrading. Yeah,
they don't want something that lasts for 10, 15 years. And honestly, today, even the diesel, let's say Etios's and all, the taxi drivers love it. In fact, they literally lamented the shutdown of it.
Shutdown of Etios.
Those diesels are still running. The 1.4 diesel, very basic engine. So I think they completely misread the customer. I think they took them for granted. I think this is a little bit where Toyota's arrogance hurt them. And I think, so, that was there. I think this Yaris was another example.
Yes.
Again, overpriced, no basic features like a sunroof. They didn't have it in that. And it's amazing why Toyota doesn't want a sunroof, because for them, it's complicated. There's mechanisms, it's prone to leakage, it puts weight in the wrong place. So they just say, forget it, we don't want to give it. But I think they've learned now they can't, you can't ignore that. And with the high cross, we've seen a huge sunroof. But that was the thinking back then. Again, slightly overpriced. Really didn't offer anything. You need a wow factor.
Right.
What Toyota's, had to do is give a wow factor in that segment where people are buying a car. Many of them for the first time, they want that aspirational feel of it,
right?
The wow factor, which they didn't give. So that's where they kind of lost out. Again, I think Corolla, very successful car, and I think did quite well. But the reason they canned it, I think there was not enough scale. Right. The original plan was to share that with Maruti to give enough scale, but I think Maruti chickened out because they didn't think that, category of car at that price with the Maruti badge would work. Yeah, so I think a lot of hard learnings. I think the Indian market has humbled the biggest of, let's say, companies. But out of all the top companies, be it Ford, GM, Volkswagen, all of who failed miserably. I mean, Volkswagen's still here, but we know that they're struggling. Ford and GM are both out. Toyota is the only one which has faltered but picked itself up and become stronger.
Now, phenomenal. I still remember very romantically because I had just got into the automotive space. That was the era of post-Lehman crisis, 2008. Maruti was going great guns with Swift and Desire and strong demand. Honda was coming out with Brio, Ford was coming out with Figo, Toyota was coming out with Etios, Liva, and there was so much of option available in the market, and there was so much riding on the brands at that point in time. I still remember A.R. Rahman was their brand ambassador, and we had that unique tune, and I was really hoping, and in fact, I had got married around the same time, and I told my wife then that let's go for a Honda or a Toyota. And now I see, as to how some of these models are really not having any presence in the market. But, a lot was riding. The lure of volumes has really sucked a lot of global brands into the Indian market.
That's right.
But very few can get it right.
Exactly, because it's getting that absolute sweet spot of giving the customer exactly what he needs at the right price.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where they got it wrong with the Etios. And, I think the lead designer, Noritaki, also did a lot of research. But like Toyota do, they will do the most phenomenal research. But, that research is not the same when the customer actually puts his money down.
What was the lure for profit or other wanting to have that minimum margin behind a product? Do you think that also is a factor that everyone...
Absolutely. Toyota, tight money company, that's what TMC also is known as. They are very profit-driven. Absolutely right. I think you said it. I think...
and that's the reason why you had cheap material, probably something that they would not do globally, but they did it for India.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. I think that's what it is. Unlike the Indian makers, like you see a Tata Tiago, they just put everything into it, and for a long time, Tata Motors passenger division, as we know,
Yes.
was unprofitable.
Right.
We're just trying to, attract the customer, gain market share by giving, so much bang for your buck. But for Toyota, their view is, listen, we're giving you an ultra reliable car.
Right.
That's what you're paying for. No one gives you that level of reliability the way we do. So suck it up for the rest of the stuff. But, sometimes it works with the Innova Krista because the mindset is different. Those are workhorses. They want that that's what they want. MPVs are generally workhorses.
Correct.
You see any MPV, anyone who's tried to, let's say, jazz it up, sex it up with a lot of features and stuff like that, and charge them for it, people don't want it.
Yeah.
MPV is a very different kind of a buyer. He's much more practical, unlike an SUV buyer, for example. So I think, but Ketan, before we wind up, I've got you here.
Yes.
So let's spill the beans.
Yes.
I'm sure people in Toyota must be, cringing right now as to what we're going to say, but let's have it out. They've got big plans.
Oh, absolutely.
And we know what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I think products is something that everyone wants from Toyota.
Yeah.
So far, we've been relying on Suzuki badge models for at least a couple of years. At least we have.
Yeah, and sorry, the fact that they're putting in so much capacity in Maharashtra means there's a lot of products to follow.
Oh, absolutely.
Products follow capacity.
Oh, absolutely. Let me take it year after year. So what we understand is that after the launch of Suzuki's own EVX, Toyota's version should follow 6 months later.
Yeah.
That's the cadence that they've been following. There is an MPV version of that global EV platform that Toyota Suzuki are working on. So an MPV version should also come in by 26.
That'd be like the electric Innova to be in a way.
Should be likely to be in that mid-size segment.
Right, so more like a Ertiga.
Ertiga, more like
Ertiga Rumion.
Correct. We also understand that the Land Cruiser, the all-new Land Cruiser, probably may make it by the end of 2025. It has been under consideration for a while.
And also export potential for that, isn't it?
At this point in time, Hormazd, the thought is to bring in as CBU, eventually at a later date when they localize it, and when the project has to go through that viability phase. But at least in 2025, the latter part of 2025, it is going to be a CBU with an updated engine, which was a case earlier that they had to discontinue the model. So 25, we have the EV version of SUV Toyota. Then we have the Land Cruiser. Then we have the MPV EV. Then there's going to be all new Fortuner. The code is 582D. They've been working on it for last few years.
And when is that out?
That is likely to be by the second half of 2026.
Right.
Yeah, and something that we've reported at Autocar India in the past, that they've been exploring potential of bringing in a C-segment SUV. They were exploring Corolla Cross, but it was unviable because Indonesia didn't want it, so they had to can the project. They put up capacity in Bidadi. The plant C is coming up, so they have to fill it. So they are going to come out with a C-segment SUV based on the High Cross platform.
Right.
So we're going to see a C-segment SUV coming from Toyota in 2027. And as far as Aurangabad is concerned, it is a global project. You don't need 800 acres, Hormazd. That's massive.
Yeah.
I foresee a minimum of 500,000 capacity there. At this point in time, I mean, clearly Toyota does think decades ahead. So it's not going to come up immediately.
Right.
While the recent speculation is factory may come up by 26, but my personal opinion has got to do with the anti-electioneering that's happening right now. I think the plant may come up by 27, 28, and there's going to be an all-new platform.
And I think we said this earlier, that platform will also have a Scorpio rival, but a monocoque.
Yes.
And by Scorpio rival, it's likely to be four-wheel drive.
Yes.
With the same road presence.
Yes.
Because I think what Toyota has realized that their Fortuner has become so expensive that there's nothing below, between the High Rider and the Fortuner as far as SUVs go.
Yes.
And they're really missing out on that.
And what's amazing for me, Hormazd, and they are in a way following a similar roadmap that Suzuki has. It's going to be a multi-path fuel future.
They can afford it.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Absolutely. So on that platform, we're going to see hybrid. We are also going to see plug-in hybrid.
Right.
We are going to see electric, and we are going to see internal combustion engine. Plus, that platform is also tuned for 100% ethanol.
Right.
So clearly, Toyota's going green in
that would probably be the engines, which they are kind of full flex fuel.
Absolutely.
85, E85 and up.
E85, and they also have compliant E100 alternative as well. So clearly, in fact, recently they reached out to the vendors and they literally had the entire technology showcase of half a dozen fuel option. And they said, you come and pick up the part and localize for us.
And talking about the multi-path strategy, I think Toyota actually are having the last laugh, because while EV sells globally and everywhere, suddenly, it was a great thing, and they are flattening, even tanking, and hybrids are taking off as a much more practical transition. This is exactly what Toyota has been saying, and they've been batting for hybrids, I think they have a firm belief in it. In fact, they literally democratize the hybrid globally with the Prius, which is really the hybrid champion of the world. And, I think at some point it sinks in that, these guys really know the market. And, I think that's what makes them special.
Now, clearly, I think localizing hybrid, I think the conviction to localize, I think for me was a big step. And the fact that they are doing it, which means it is available to you at much more accessible price. I think the price difference is about 15% only with the ICE and hybrid of Innova.
Unlike Honda,
which is
where the city hybrid was just ridiculously expensive.
Absolutely.
And Honda were one of the hybrid guys, and they moved away from hybrid, and they've gone, again, they got it wrong. We talked about this.
Right.
Instead of getting the Elevate with the hybrid, they've gone full EV. But anyway,
yes.
But I think Toyota, that's what I think, just that understanding of where things go. They've got it wrong, like,
we pointed out.
Yeah. But I think as far as this goes, I think they've proved a point to the world.
Absolutely. In fact, there is a strong emphasis to reduce import from China as well. There's a diktat given to vendors that we don't want to source from China. Tell us what can you localize here. And there is a strong drive to localize hybrids as well.
Right.
They are betting on hybrids, plug-in hybrids. So clearly,
flex fuel hybrids, I think that's what they're betting on, because if a concession has to come, I think it'll be for flex fuel hybrids, because the logic is that with ethanol and biofuels, the energy density is so low, you lose 20-25% efficiency if it goes to, above.
And that can be compensated by hybrids.
So, and maybe, for the consumer, that you're kind of, making him, the loss he's getting in terms of fuel efficiency,
yes,
he gets by supporting a flex fuel hybrid. So I think that's where it could happen. I think
that's a good suggestion, actually.
Yeah. So that's where it could be. But one thing which I'm curious to know, and I don't know the answer, what's going to happen to diesel? My feeling is they'll continue that on the ladder frames as long as they can.
So I mean,
the diesel does have an end thing, but I think with BS7, I think they can still meet it, because BS7 norms are not so much on the engine; it's more on particulate matter on tires and brakes and stuff like that.
As we know, there was a little bit of a gap in Innova Krista's production.
Right.
For a brief while, they were upgrading the product. I think the big clincher could be BS7.
Ketan, I think on the engine side, combustion side, BS6 to BS7 isn't such a huge jump.
But on a diesel front, it could be Hormazd.
I maybe so, but I think
what I'm hearing. I'll tell you what I'm hearing.
Because the Indian OEMs will continue.
So I'll tell you what
Mahindra will continue for sure.
So what I'm hearing from the ecosystem, there are multiple scenarios being looked at. There's a deadline of 26 when you have to be ready for BS7 for 28 deadline. The next deadline is 28, and the third deadline is 31. All three scenarios being explored. Friends tell me it could potentially be 26 that they may can it. But they're not giving up as yet. There are multiple scenarios being explored at Toyota, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be sad if they did, because, and I think it would be, they'd lose an opportunity, because that Innova Krista running on diesel, as far as, we have the kind of crisscrossing of the hinterland, a diesel Innova is really the kind of mode choice of transport.
And talking about an era where
it is a Bactrian camel of the Silk Route. Yeah.
That's right. And we're talking about an era where ICE penetration is still going to remain very high. So they should have.
Absolutely. I think we are going to be last man standing in ICE.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do on the diesel front. But I think, as you said, these are kind of markers which one has to look at.
Absolutely.
And some hard calls have to be taken. But with less and less people, let's say investing in diesel and very few remaining, Mahindra being one of them, I don't know whether, Toyota would give up so easily, because they've seen how Mahindra has actually grabbed the diesel segment.
Absolutely. I think one thing probably could be that the share of hybrid is much higher. And that actually allows them on the CO2 footprint front.
That's right. And they'll all be on monocoques, because I don't think you can really hybridize or electrified body on frame. It just doesn't make sense, because you need so much bigger batteries for that kind of weight. It's counterproductive.
Right.
So if at all, any form of electrification will have to be on a monocoque platform. And you're right. I think the way forward is monocoque. I mean, future generations of Fortuner eventually could be monocoques, hybrid, and some form of electrification.
Right.
Will change the character, but I think that's how it is. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Now, I'd like to speak about the challenges that the discounting and the stock and all that.
Absolutely. I mean, talking about discounting, Camry, 10 lakhs off.
It's crazy. I think, while the going is good with Suzuki models, clearly, I think the message to the dealers is we need to get volumes in order to get Toyota products. So better sell Maruti cars. That is what is going to give us scale and eventually our own models. So brave it out for the next 2 to 3 years. Get as much volumes as we can. Let's create a scale. Let's create a profitable operation. And in the process, Toyota is doing what it usually doesn't do, which is discounting, pushing metal in the market. It's quite unusual to see a Toyota at a dealership around for 40 to 45 days. Some of the Maruti models, Suzuki models.
But these are all except the Innova and...
Yes, the Innova, High Cross, they continue to rule the roost.
Yeah, their main pillars and heroes are still
continue to rule the roost. Yes, but discounting is something that Toyota usually used to dissuade from. They were okay to sell one unit less rather than getting discounted. So it's a new Toyota that we are seeing. And plus, we are talking about a Toyota every 50 to 100 kilometers. So...
You mean a Toyota dealership?
Dealership. So... over-dealerization, I mean, the big question, the million-dollar question, as some of the friends say, is Hormazd whether they can sustain this growth momentum. They are on a fantastic path.
Then it's all about volumes. Volumes have become important.
Absolutely.
Because to justify the investment, to justify the dealer viability, to justify, so many dealers. So when you have that kind of pressure, honestly, it's not a great position to be in.
Right.
But I think, they've got some phenomenal assets, and just look at that profit they have. I mean, if they sacrifice a bit of that for volume, I don't think they'll really feel the pain too much.
Exactly. Absolutely phenomenal. Right. But again, Hormazd, that's how the Indian market is. Clearly, at the end of the day, you also want your dealer ecosystem to play the game that the rest of the market is playing. There's high inventory in the market. Yes, everyone has inventory. Toyota also has, but lesser of a headache. But clearly, it is also aligning the overall ecosystem to be ready for a higher volume game. So it's going to be interesting. Clearly, high volumes, many more products coming in the future. Challenging, but it's going to be exciting.
You're right. And I think, talking about high volumes, I think what's interesting, and, while we wrap up this podcast, is, again, going back to Mahindra, it's the good old ladder frame which is giving you good volumes and great profits.
Yes.
Because it's quite a low-tech kind of chassis and architecture. And it's so suitable for India. In fact, again, people know that. Right. Chassis wali gaadi chahiye, which means they want the ladder frame, because there is a certain feel you get to that. The ladder frame doesn't have a great future. I think we all know that. I think the smart thing to do would be for them to chalao it as long as they can,
right.
Not discontinue it in favor of another product. They learned that with the Innova Krista. I don't know how long they can do that. Mahindra's made an art form out of it. Look at the Scorpio and Scorpio Classics.
Yes.
Great strategy. But I think, just to wrap up, it's amazing that Toyota, out of all the big global multinationals, I mean, I'm not taking the Koreans, they are a different breed, but as I said, you take the really top players, they're the only ones who've really, in a way, not cracked the Indian market because they're not present everywhere. And but I think they've made what is really difficult for everyone to do, and that's to make a profit in India. And they've achieved that phenomenally well. So I think for Toyota, it's good days ahead. And
yeah, absolutely. For me, Hormazd, it's the global play, and they really think far and ahead. They have vision for India, a much larger vision for India, a much bigger global vision for India, and probably exports of hybrids and EVs from India.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we'll wrap up this session of Deep Drive. Do tune in next Saturday again at 11 a.m. and stay notified so you don't forget, and you can even hear us on different platforms like Spotify and Apple. Thanks for watching.